This is Common Sense Radio. Straightforward and no excuses.
All right. Come on now.
This is the Steve Gruber Show.
Call me crazy.
Oh, yeah.
What I said was perfectly right and spot on accurate.
Boy's got a mouth like a cannon, always shooting it all.
Stop. Yeah, stop. I mean, you're way off script.
Got it in me. Gonna quit until it all comes out.
Hey, boy!
Been a long education.
Yeah, you know, it's not cynical. It's common sense.
Pay attention to me when I'm talking to you.
I'm gonna rock the nation. Rock the nation.
Genuine, accountable, and raw. Here is Steve Gruber.
Welcome back to the Steve Gruber Show. Just after 7 minutes after the top of the hour right now, I'm Daren Martinez in for Steve Gruber. Would love to have you join the conversation for today, this Friday, 888-900-9966. 888-900-9966 if you'd like to join the conversation, whatever's on your mind today. Maybe it's the Bernie Sanders, not the Bernie Sanders, I apologize, the Dr. Ben Carson rap ad, we'll get to in a little bit. I think even Dr. Ben Carson kind of going, you know, I may have approved it, but I don't know if I really like it that much. But, and should he have to do that to get to different parts of his audience, to, you know, get his message out? I would like to get your take on that. But anyway, this morning, Egyptian police are carrying out detailed security checks around the airport at Sharm el-Sheikh, the resort from where the doomed Russian plane took off just last weekend. Dozens of buses are waiting outside the airport, with the line stretching up to a half mile as police inspect each vehicle. British tourists who have been stranded since last Saturday's crash will start flying home from the Sinai Peninsula on Friday. The Detroit Police Department recently completed an internal investigation into the June 24th incident in which officers pursued a suspect for almost 72 seconds along a residential street. Detroit Police spokesman Sergeant Michael Woody tells news sources that another commanding officer still needs to review the results of the investigation and make a final determination, but it's been recommended that the officers be exonerated. Police say 30-year-old Lorenzo Harris was driving a stolen vehicle at about 100 miles per hour when it lost control, went off the roadway, killing a 6-year-old boy and his 3-year-old sister. 3 other children and an adult were also injured. Authorities say a 68-year-old motorist was killed after striking a deer and being hit by a truck as he lay in the roadway. Midland TV News reports David Obertine of Bentley was riding in Bay County's Pinconning Township Wednesday evening when he hit the deer. He was thrown from his bike, which Lori Sullivan tells the Battle Creek Inquirer she found, and was later hit by an oncoming vehicle and died as a result of his injuries. 20-year-old Indiana man sentenced to 2 years on probation for having consensual sex with a 14-year-old Michigan girl who lied about her age has been taken off sex offender registries in both states. His lawyer says he wants less restrictive probation in Indiana. Scott Grable told the AP on Thursday some terms imposed on Zach Anderson by the Elkhart County Probation Department are more restrictive than those handed down last month by a Michigan judge. Grable says he's seeking to get conditions changed so they more closely match the restrictions set out by Judge Angela Pasula of Berrien County, Michigan. Anderson's father, Les, told the Elkhart Truth that with higher and tighter restrictions, his son almost becomes an outcast again to society. I don't know how to respond to that, to be honest with you. Consensual or non-consensual, somebody lying about their age, she was 14. And I think you should stay on the registry. And maybe that we should have unified rulings on that across the board here in the States. So it doesn't make it easier for one to go from one state to the next. Just a thought. A gun rights advocacy website is offering a free seminar on the legal aftermath and other issues surrounding shootings done in self-defense. The 3-hour program is scheduled Saturday at the Detroit Trade Market by Legally Armed in Detroit, which says the training is for anyone who owns a firearm for self-defense. Law enforcement officers, bail bondsmen, and criminal defense attorneys will take part in a panel discussion on the issue. Reports from the Ann Arbor City Council on Thursday night voted 8-1 in favor of hiring sharpshooters to lure and kill 100 deer at night in city-owned parks and natural areas. In order for the cull to take place, the council also voted to change a city law to allow the discharge of weapons in public places. Dozens of opponents attended the meeting and argued that the cull is dangerous to the public and isn't a necessary way to address problems with the deer population. One supporter said the deer population is getting out of control and the cull shouldn't be limited to 100 deer. If you've ever been in an urban setting and have seen the how fast deer can adapt and reproduce, it's almost alarming, and maybe 100, even in those places, is not quite enough. And I can only imagine the citizens of Ann Arbor being outraged. Look, and the people that are coming in are qualified. They're qualified sharpshooters to come in and handle the situation. And wow, maybe, just maybe, little common sense, they might take the meat from the deer, process it, turn it into hamburger, which is what happens when you donate venison, and actually feed a few people that might need the food in Michigan. From 100 deer, I think that'd be a pretty good amount of good proteins, healthy proteins, to get people here in the state. Just my thought. 888-900-9966. Lots coming your way. Would love to have you, chime in on whatever it is you want to talk about today. Free for All Friday here on the Steve Gruber Show. I'm Daren Martinez. You can find me on Facebook. Look for me at Wild Michigan, the outdoors radio show that we do here on weekends as part of your Michigan Talk Network programming. Should be a fun weekend with some of the stuff we've got lined up here. The warmer weather is making its way out. The cooler weather coming back in for November, and rut activity starting to happen. So if you're out on the roads, especially at the dusk hours into the night hours, especially with the warmer days we've been having, into the morning hours, be aware. Deer on the move, and when you see one, there's usually probably some more behind it, and do not veer for deer. That has been the calling, the mantra this year. Do not veer for deer. You just stay in a straight line as best as possible, and let your insurance do the work after the fact. Trust me, it works. From personal experience, I know. So much more coming your way. Daren Martinez here on the Steve Gruber Show. 888-900-9966. Would love you to join us here in the conversation on the Steve Gruber Show on the Michigan Talk Network.
Vote, inspire, vote, revive, vote, Ben Carson 2016. Vote and support Ben Carson for our next president and be awesome.
America became a great nation early on, not because it was flooded with politicians, but because it was flooded with people who understood the value of personal responsibility, hard work, creativity, innovation, and that's
welcome back to the Steve Gruber Show. Daren Martinez, the Ben Carson ad.
I'm very hopeful that I'm not the only one who's willing to pick up the baton of freedom. Because freedom,
the Ben Carson ad
fight for it every day.
featuring the rap by aspiring mogul.
We're fighting for our children and the next
Get
generation.
a little more volume on that, Alex.
America back on track. We gotta vote Ben Carson. A matter of fact, go out and vote.
I'm Ben Carson, and I approve this message.
Paid for by Carson America.
Paid for, approved by, but kind of bobbing and weaving, going, God, was that really a good idea? And I'm not saying that for me. I'm saying that because even the candidate, Dr. Ben Carson, kind of says, probably would have taken a little different approach towards that ad. But, and I'm going to open this question out to you, 888-900-9966. Do you think it's a good idea? Do you think it's a bad idea? Do you think it's going to draw good attention? To me, I'm kind of like, I don't think he had to go that route to appeal to anybody. I mean, he as a person, as I see him, not the most magnetic personality, but loaded with common sense and a pretty good approach to things. But do you is that Pack or Pock? Sorry, notes from Alex. He didn't go that route. It was a Pack. It was that Pack. But agreeing with my producer, which you cannot read or hear, but there's going to be some backlash to this. I don't think that it was necessary to do a rap just because whatever the reason behind it, to appeal to a certain segment of the population, to appeal to a younger group, to appeal to anybody in particular. I don't think that route was necessary. I think what he speaks and what he stands for and the pretty cut and dried person that I see as Dr. Ben Carson, as presidential candidate, Dr. Ben Carson, I don't think that, it was like terribly necessary to go the rap route. And I cannot wait for the backlash to come through. Cannot wait for the media to come in. I can't wait for Kanye to weigh in. Because the world cares about Kanye. Right? The world cares what Kanye West has to say and what he will say about this and why the genius of Kanye, as Kanye would probably put it, was not used in this. But and thanks to David, who weighs in on my Facebook page, saying maybe he should have used a jazz artist, maybe something a little more, I don't know, a different angle that maybe fits the personality that we see. But I'd like to get your opinion. Do you think it was a bad idea that was approved by Dr. Ben Carson? Do you think the rap angle was a bad angle to go at? I don't know. Will it draw attention in a positive way? I think probably more negative than anything else, because the liberal media, loves to pick apart what the right is doing, and they will find a way. And Kanye will find a. I'm almost putting my paycheck that Kanye is going to speak out. So. 888-900-9966. I'm Daren Martinez. Steve Gruber out today. More things coming your way today. Of course, the U.S. job data will show whether the pace of hiring remains modest or not. Today's employment report from the Labor Department is being closely watched for signs of a slowdown in the pace of hiring, which could, in turn, influence Federal Reserve policymakers considering an interest rate hike. In August and September, hiring was held down for a faltering global economies and a stronger dollar cut into U.S. manufacturers' overseas sales and lowered corporate profits. Now, worries over China's slowdown also likely spooked some employers. Those headwinds lowered job gains to just 136,000 in August and 142,000 in September. Survey by FactSet predicts hiring in October added 185,000 jobs. The October unemployment rate is expected to remain about 5.1% for a third straight month. Economists say that any gain above roughly 150,000 would likely also keep Federal Reserve policymakers on track to raise interest rates in December. Going to go to the phones right now. Chris in Kalamazoo, welcome to the show, sir. How are you?
Very good. How are you?
I'm doing well. So what'd you think of the Dr. Ben Carson rap?
I'm not thinking a whole lot either way about it myself. I know the left may not like it, but it may be pretty popular amongst young evangelicals. I know that's a big music genre that's real popular right now. I work with a youth group with my church, and artists like Lecrae and Shylin and stuff are very popular. you're all kind of into rap music.
Do you think it'll draw a lot of attention outside of the media? I mean, the voting public, do you think it'll draw a lot of attention?
Possible, but I'm not sure. I know it might be a good way to appeal to a younger crowd, for sure, especially at the base that Ben Carson already has in the whole evangelical realm.
All right, excellent. Chris Kalamazoo, thank you so much. Appreciate the call. Going to go to Clark next in Delta Township. Good morning, Clark. How are you?
Morning. From my perspective, if Ben Carson's going to be intellectually honest and maintaining his message, regardless of the delivery method, I'm good with that. Rap's not my thing, but if he's gonna try to appeal to everybody, he might have to pick different methods. But it sounded like his message is right on target and is not changing with the wind, and that's more of the other party that likes to twist and bend.
All right, appreciate the call. Clark, Delta Township. This is the Steve Gruber Show on the Michigan Talk Network.
Taking a closer look at the stories that affect you most with a big dose of common sense. Filling in for Steve Gruber, here's Daren Martinez.
Welcome back to the Steve Gruber Show. I'm Daren Martinez, 888-900-9966. Daren Bakst, Research Fellow in Agricultural Policy at the Heritage Foundation, joining us right now. Applauding the Senate passage of a resolution to repeal implementation of the latest EPA Corps of Engineers water rule. You say the Senate has done the right thing, waiting for the House to follow suit. Good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
Give us a little information on the, and my fault, not completely up to speed on this, on the new EPA Corps of Engineers water rule. I know a little bit, please, if you could enlighten me even further.
Sure. Yeah, this is a big rule. The EPA and the Army Corps of Engineers have historically tried to expand their power under the Clean Water Act to try to be able to regulate almost any type of water body imaginable across the country. And they've been shot down by the Supreme Court a couple times over the last 12 to 13 years or so, and now they're back at it. And this new water rule is just another attempt to try to expand their power and to try to regulate almost any possible water again. And the problem is that from a property rights perspective, certainly, if you have to get a permit if you're going to have any type of impact on these types of waters. And that will affect even, like if you're a farmer, you're just doing ordinary farming, or if you're a home builder, it makes it very difficult to actually do very ordinary activities, normal activities, simply because you have to get these permits for waters that nobody in the right mind would think is a water.
It would seem to me that, it's, like you said, a huge power grab to overshadow and undermine the local municipalities just in general, not to mention the property owners that may have bodies of water or even be using water for personal reasons.
Yeah, the Clean Water Act is, expressly says that it's supposed to be a relationship. It's supposed to be a relationship between the states and the federal government to kind of address the water issues in this country. And what the EPA and Corps are doing is they're basically kicking states out of the whole process and taking over for them. Basically, I don't know if the implication is that, hey, we don't think you're capable of doing it, but that's in effect what they're doing. And it also affects, it's even, like you said, local decision-making as well. So it's not surprising, given this kind of uncooperative relationship that federal government has with states, that about 31 states are suing the federal government on this rule.
It really surprises me. Look, the arrogance aspect of this does not surprise me in the least, giving this current EPA, giving the current administration, and their overreaching, the we've got this, we'll tell you what to do mentality. And in a state like Michigan, where the Great Lakes are already threatened by so much, to have an agency come in that, in my opinion, probably wouldn't have clue one on what to do with this. I can only see them possibly wanting to shift water to other states under their direction.
Yeah, that's the key point, is that, the reason why states are supposed to play an important role is because they do have a better understanding of the needs of, their state, much better than a bunch of bureaucrats behind desks in Washington, D.C. And that's why the Clean Water Act, kind of anticipates and directs that the states play a leading role in this process. And unfortunately, again, they're not playing that leading role because the federal government wants to step in for them. And I should point out, the rule is really extreme. It can cover certain man-made ditches. If you have a piece of land that anybody in their right mind would think is land, but it sometimes holds water like a few days of the year, that might be considered a stream under the rule. And the rule is so vague, and that benefits the EPA and Corps because it's vague. It allows them to be able to decide kind of as they go along whether or not something can be regulated or not. So it's very difficult for any property owner to be able to figure out whether or not they are even complying with the rule. So what they wind up doing is they don't engage in activities on their land. They don't use their property the way they should be able to use their property because they're scared of getting in trouble from the EPA, and we know the EPA is not exactly shy to use their power.
Absolutely not. Daren Bakst is our guest here on the Steve Gruber Show. Daren, it's gone through the Senate without an issue. What was there any kind of backlash in the Senate, or did this kind of go through unanimously?
No, I wish it went through unanimously. That would be nice. Unfortunately, it didn't. It's been kind of a unusual process, but the Senate had I don't want to get too in the weeds, the Senate had a bill that would have been a little more expansive. They didn't simply just kill the rule, but address some other issues too, and that did not get passed. But as a backup, they did pass what's called a resolution of disapproval, which would allow them to get around the filibuster in the Senate, and that did pass, 55 to 43. So it was fairly decent vote, not enough to overcome a filibuster, but it passed. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, the goal is to just kill this rule. And if the EPA and Corps desire to go back and do another rule, then they needed to do it right. But in the meantime, the first step is you got to kill the rule. So the House needs to then take action after the Senate has killed that rule. Then the House now needs to pass the same resolution so we can get this to the president.
Now it's going to. When does it go to the House? And do you think that there's going to be some other amendments or changes in there?
I don't think so. I certainly would expect the House that they need to pass the resolution just as is, so it can just go directly to the president. Because once they change it, then you have to kind of negotiate something with the Senate. And the idea is to just kill this quickly. Now, what will happen is the president has already issued a veto threat, and he'll veto the legislation. But he would veto any legislation to try to kill the rule. So, if the president vetoes it, then he does, and he's going to have to defend a rule that is just, I can't say universally, but it's widely opposed by so many different groups, local government, states, and it's just a complete mess.
Yeah, and I can't see him willingly signing that because it's his EPA. It's his little brown shirts that are taking over this, and wanting to control this. And I honestly can't see him, not putting up a fight for this.
Yeah, and this is an example of what happens when you have kind of an out-of-control administrative state. Congress just doesn't have... Congress can do what they can to try to rein in these agencies, but sometimes there are limits because the president who actually issued the rule is not going to want to kill the rule. Although I will say that I like to think that some presidents of the past would have recognized that a rule this bad was something that needed to go back to the drawing board on anyway. And this president is not that person.
Not so much. Daren Bakst, appreciate you joining us here on the Steve Gruber Show.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good weekend, and thanks for bringing us up to speed on that. Gonna talk movies. Gonna see what else is going on around the state. Appreciate joining us. 888-900-9966. Love to hear your voice here on the Steve Gruber Show on the Michigan Talk Network.
Michigan, born and raised with Midwestern values and Michigan common sense. Filling in for Steve Gruber, here is Daren Martinez.
Welcome back to the Steve Gruber Show. Daren Martinez. Sad news from the world of automobiles and television and movies. George Barris, creator of the Batmobile, Knight Rider's kit, also the Monkeys mobile, and the host of other the Munsters cars, passed away. Loved the work of George Barris. The guy was absolutely awesome, and leaves behind a legacy of some of the coolest cars ever to grace television or the screen. But speaking of screens, Ron Van Timmeren, Celebration Cinema, joining us right now. Hello, Ron. How are you, sir?
Good morning, Daren. I'm doing great, thank you.
Absolutely good. Great to have you here. It's a Friday. We got movies opening up. I want to start with the fun stuff first. The Peanuts movie in 2D and 3D. Of course, George Schultz been gone for a long time, but the technology and the life of Peanuts and Charlie Brown, our gang, or good old Charlie Brown, is here still.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, Charles Schultz's son and grandson have credits for the screenplay on this, so they're keeping it in the family, and they're also bringing back the classics, Dran. I mean, we got Snoopy and the Red Baron, we got the little red-haired girl, we got the football being pulled out from underneath, all that stuff and more. And yeah, in 3D, I mean, obviously the look of movies, of animated movies, the computer generation has made them look almost real. So there you have it, Charlie Brown, like you've never seen him before.
You know, being a fan of the old school stuff and having that one particular Charlie Brown voice in mind, are we still close? Because you know how that goes. It's hard to copy a kid's voice, but we still have those old ones back in our mind.
Yeah, exactly. And they brought in a 10-year-old kid. This is not an adult voice that's been synthesized to try to make him sound like the good old Charlie Brown of 65 years ago or whatever. Well, it's actually been 50 years since they did the Charlie Brown Christmas, which is, of course, the classic and the favorite. Anyway, a nice voice, a real kid, and sounds just like Charlie Brown.
Excellent. Looking forward. That actually looks really good, so I'm looking forward to seeing that. Also, Daniel Craig, his last role, I do believe, as James Bond in 007.
Yeah, you know what? He's under contract for one more, and he's kind of been backtracking on his statements about how difficult he's found it to play Bond and to think about doing another one. Think about, the woman who's just given birth and ask her if she wants to have another kid. That's kind of the analogy I get. Anyway, he's good in this movie. If you liked Skyfall, this is really a sequel to that. So you've got a little bit of reference to early Bond movies as well as Skyfall. And they spent a fortune on this thing, Duran. $250 million is the budget, and it looks fantastic. Christoph Waltz is a terrific bad guy. Leah Seydoux, the new Bond girl, I must say, I loved her as well.
Christoph Waltz, that guy was awesome in Inglourious Bastards and some other stuff that I've seen. Absolutely love that guy.
Yeah, he is, an Oscar winner. He's one of the best in the business, and he can play anything. So he really does do bad guy really well. And that whole Spectre organization that goes all the way back to Sean Connery days. Mm-hmm. You can go as deep as you want to with this thing. It's a standalone movie, but it's got all the great old references to back in the Bond days.
Now, what else is going on with movies around Celebration Cinema?
Well, we've turned the corner here for Hollywood's holiday movie season, and that means every week we're going to get some big hits, and we're looking forward to, of course, the final chapter of that Mockingjay, that Hunger Games book. We've got a new Pixar movie coming later this month for the Thanksgiving week, and, of course, Star Wars right around the corner in December. But a few good holdovers like The Martian still in theaters, Bridge of Spies, if you haven't seen that. I really, really liked that. Even Burnt from last week didn't do much business. That Bradley Cooper movie, The Foodie, we call it, a little love story, too. I thought that was pretty good. Our Brand is Crisis with Sandra Bullock and Billy Bob Thornton. Plenty of good holdovers out there.
Now, Burnt not doing so well, but one of my coworkers at the other station who is, involved in the chef aspect, so to speak, says, you know what? Bradley Cooper really good at playing a bad guy, and I agree. I mean, the guy can play a really good guy. He can play a really bad guy, and I think he's probably getting a bum deal on this.
Well, he's one of the biggest stars in the business right now, and this little hiccup on the box office side of things isn't going to slow his career down, but I don't know what it was. I mean, the marketing didn't work, or, the subject just wasn't compelling enough, but he's really good in this volatile role. Sienna Miller playing the love interest. The food shots look great. I mean, oh my goodness, it's one of the better foodies I've ever seen, from what goes on in the kitchen with the chef and all the people that are working in the kitchen, and even front of the house politics. I mean, I know what you mean. Deb Hart loved it. I did too.
Sounds awesome. Ron Van Timmeren, thank you so much. Appreciate you bringing us up to speed on what's going on at Celebration Cinema and the movies. Thank you, sir.
See you at the movies.
All right. Thanks again, Ron Van Timmeren. Going to go to the phones right now. I do believe we have Larry from Perry on hold. Good morning, Larry. How are you today?
I'm fine, Daren. Thank you. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. What's on your mind today?
Well, I wanted to offer a little commentary on your EPA story. The first article of those characters' mode of operations is control.
Well, of course.
I've tried to think of over the years some federal agencies that one would describe as trustworthy, and I'm usually coming up empty on that. But the EPA they're part and parcel the same bunch, as far as I can tell, as the folks, as the climate change people.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's been a whole agenda with the whole thing, but then again, we forget about Solyndra and everything else, all these other pet projects, these green projects that have gone in and have failed miserably. But you know what? Keep pushing the EPA, keep pushing for those greener solutions, and like you said, the control.
Yep, and we seem to have forgotten that it was widely reported, I think a year or so ago, that the lab in England that did the research and compiled the data that was used to legitimize the global warming model was found to have falsified the data.
Kind of like the Volkswagen of government. Just a thought. Steve Gruber Show on the Michigan Talk Network.